I'm Taya Davies with my clinical research partners. Thank you all for having me, and congratulations to ICIC. I actually just joined last year, so I'm kind of surprised to be up here. I am the clinical site director for Met Clinical Research. We are located in Irvington, New Jersey, and we also have 2 other clinics in New Jersey that we work with as well. I just have a couple of questions before we start. Anyone here, by the way, I'm almost 60, so I have a couple of questions I'm going to ask. Is there anyone here over the age of 50 who knows what their cardiovascular risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the next few years is? Anyone? Okay. Y'all are lying. You're over 50. I'm sorry? Anyone over the age of 50 who knows what their cardiovascular risk is for getting a heart attack or a stroke in the next couple of years? Oh, you do? What is that? Not the answer I was looking for. Okay. All right. All right. So, sorry? Okay. All right. So we actually calculate that in terms of genetic factors. So I could actually do a blood test with you to know what that factor is. Okay. So there are other diseases that also affect us genetically as well. And in the US, over 75% of patients who participate in clinical trials are actually not of community of color. All right? So this is how we got here. So 2020, the Food and Drug Administration set out what we call the Diversity Action Plan so that we can get communities of color to participate in clinical trials. There are a lot of there's actually no disease that you can think of that does not disproportionately affect communities of color. You can think of hypertension, chronic kidney disease, cancer even, just name it. So it was very, very important that we kind of get this work started. So we started in 2021, and then we actually became fully functional in 2022, all right? And so over the past 3 years or so, we've been able to embed ourselves in communities of color in Irvington and East Orange in New Jersey. All right. So we're a Black-owned woman business, and we work primarily with clinical research organizations, pharmaceutical companies, biotechs, as well as device companies. There are a lot of ways that we treat conditions right now that is so much easier than it was in the past. I know some of us here who probably have high cholesterol still use medications every day, but hopefully in the next 6 months or so, we should be able to have an injection once every 3 months, and that should help us with managing hyperlipidemia. Okay. So what question are we helping to solve, right? Is that disparity, that health gap. So you go to your doctor's office, you spend 1 hour, 40 minutes waiting, and then they only see you for like 5 or 10 minutes, right? We don't like that. So one of the things that we do is every patient that comes in, we do a full genetic profile. We want to know what diseases you're exposed to, your family history. We also want to know if you have children and what diseases your children will be exposed to. What we found is that patients who understand the morphology of their disease can actually engage more with their providers and are more compliant with their medication, as well as their clinic visits, right? So it doesn't matter if you have insurance. Nobody should be without care just because you don't have insurance. The reason this business is so effective is because pharmaceutical companies are making drugs that do not know how they affect communities of color. So that is the problem that we're solving. We're helping them to ensure that when they give us a clinical protocol or have a device that is going to help solve a problem, a health problem, they must at least have some data on how that device or medication is going to affect communities of color. So our solution works because we have embedded ourselves in the communities that we serve. We don't accept any clinical protocol unless we know that there's a visibility. In our advisory council, the community members must also be part of that council. We don't want to take any protocol that we're not sure that will be received in the community. that we serve. We also have dedicated providers who who are, their clinical indication is so one of the things that we do when we choose providers, they have to have been working in that community for at least more than 15 years. Because we want to make sure that they know the patients know them, and the patients are going to be compliant with their visits. So that is very important to us. The other thing is we have a clinical trial management system that tracks the patient from when they walk in to when they finish their visit. So there is no, what I would call confusion in terms of what that patient is doing for that visit, and everyone is properly trained on the systems that we use, and we also have AI-enabled recruitment plans. So the market that we serve is huge. I mean, pharmaceutical industry is more than 150 billion every year. For instance, we've only had like 2 clients that have really been our moneymaker in the last maybe 3 years. And each of those clients, on average, we make close to like 600,000 to $1 million. So this will actually be the first year that we're going to make over $1 million. So we really want to ensure that this work continues. We really want to make sure that our community are not only invested in the medications that are coming out, but they're also invested in their health, right? We want to make sure that not only do they understand how the disease affects their bodies, we also want to make sure that they are compliant with their medication, and they are compliant working with their providers to make sure that they're getting the care that they need. And just because you don't have insurance does not mean that you shouldn't get care. So we do have a competitive landscape. What is unique about our business is that we are a niche market. We just don't see, anyone can walk in and get care. However, the companies that we serve, they are very focused on getting the data that we provide to them. So our pricing structure, it's just like any typical clinical trial company that also does drug development as well. So it's synonymous. However, we do have certain drivers for the work that we do, because we do have that community embedded in our practice. We want to make sure that any patient that walks in, it gets the right therapeutic treatment that works for them. So it's more of like a personalized medicine that we're doing. So we do have some considerations for what we're asking for. We're asking for $300,000 because, like I mentioned, this will be our first year of getting over $1 million, $1.5 million. But the amount that we're asking for, the $300,000 that we're asking for, is actually going to be for infrastructure, because we need a bigger space for the work that we do. We also need to train additional staff, and we're also looking to improve on the AI-enabled recruitment plan that we use currently. So those are some of our management teams. Dr. Adiodi is a GI specialist. He's also double board certified in internal medicine. Dr. Shagun Simon is actually a nephrologist. He's also board certified in nephrology. As we know, chronic kidney disease is a huge concern for communities of color. There are a couple of valuation projections there for the next 3 years in terms of the profitability and the strong core profitability that we have as a company. So like I mentioned, this 2026 will be the first year that we're going over $1 million. All right, so that is our EBITDA. We also talked about rate of the capacity of the work that we do, and also the return on investment. We're looking at least the next 18 months. That should be 2 to 3 times the investment amount that is put in. Oh, these were previous year's records. Back. So that is the capital that we're seeking, the $300,000, and we're also looking for strategic partnership to scale the business. And, let's transform diversity in research together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Cam, you want to kick us off? Or since we did get a chance to have you give an opinion on the first one.
Absolutely. Wow. I would actually love for you to lean more into your strategic approach to this work, because this work is actually very touchy. Not only is it a lot of red tape from a procedure and law perspective, but you're dealing with very vulnerable communities. So I want to hear more about how you and your team strategically approach these communities and what it looks like maybe through your lens. Do you all approach it from a city level? Do you approach it from the community level? Like, how does that hierarchy look from a practical perspective?
Yes, absolutely. So every work that we do, every clinical protocol that comes to our clinic has to go through what we call the ethics committee review. The ethics committee can be on a central level, or it could be on a local level. On the local level, we usually ask communities, leaders, so we go to city council, we talk to churches in the area, because we want them to be part of the board that decides what clinical studies we bring to them. So that's one. And then our providers as well. We also want to make sure that there's a visibility plan for the clinical study when it comes to our desk. So in those two ways, we're able to work with the community, work with the providers, and also get the approvals that we need in order to conduct the study.
Perfect, thank you. And do you have an example of a city that you all are already in, or is that the plan for this year?
Yes. Irvington, New Jersey.
Okay.
East Orange, New Jersey. And we also work in Newark, New Jersey.
Perfect, thank you.
So you mentioned that you would use some of the money for investing into the hiring of staff. Have you turned away business because you've not had sufficient staff to take out additional testing?
Yes, we've actually turned away one business. It was a sleep study for young adults. The clinical trial, the inclusion criteria was a little bit stiff for our community that we work at. It's really hard to tell a 23-year-old not to drink maybe 1 or 2 shots of alcohol. So it's really hard. So sometimes when we look at the clinical protocol and we feel that it's not going to be viable for our community, then we don't do it. So it hasn't been because we didn't have staffing. Yeah, but the thing is, when we get more work, like right now we just got a contract with the NIH to use GLP-1s to treat long COVID haulers. Such a work like that will require a lot of staffing. So, and this is a project that is in millions and we don't want to let go of it. So we definitely need to hire more staff. So, yeah.
Doug, what's the number on that microphone?
So the idea in this situation is that we would invest $300,000 and that there would be a recap through private equity at some point in time. Have you had an opportunity to take a look at what the private equity market looks like for this type of work? And are there some ideal investors you see out there that you'd like to partner with sometime down the road?
We've had a couple of companies approach us, but they've always asking for equity, and we're such a young company, so we just don't want to give up that much equity. We could maybe at this point think of maybe 5% or maybe even 8% of the business, but we would rather maybe do like a loan structure so we can actually retain as much equity as we can, because we know this is really going to blow up.
Great presentation. Your funding need seems a lot more like a middle of the fairway ask for an SBA lender, or assuming you're headquartered in New Jersey, NJEDA, or one of the CDFIs in your neighborhood. What sort of pushback have you gotten if you've tested the market there already? Is there something that's not clicking through the underwriting that seems like the easiest path to go for your funding?
Oh yes, we did receive a $50,000 from the NJEDA, which we paid back. I think we just had about $25,000 more to pay on that. So we've had some funding here and there. But, like I said, we would rather work with a loan than give up any equity in the business.
Hi, I have been here so many times on these stages doing these pitches, so I know, just know that you gave us what we were asking for, so you can feel good. So again, reading your bio and being inspired and amazed by you, all three of you, I'm going to do the same thing I did with Laith. I was expecting you to come up and say, I have 15 years of experience in medical research. I've worked with biologics like Humira and microcare wearables. And did you know in our community, 50% of drugs do not include research that, are segmented for our populations. I'm going to change that, right? Like those sort of things. I think that your ability to roll in your background and your team's background into that opening goes, whoa, she knows what she's saying. I'm going to listen more. And then to say, I know this big problem, because a lot of times we're coached to, and I've done this too, you engage the audience or you give a persona or you give something like that. And I think that you are uniquely able to flex, right? Uniquely able to flex your ability to talk about this research that is hidden sometimes, right? And it's not prioritized. So that's, I think, really good for those type of impact investors and those sort of partners. Because a lot of the investors I've had, to be honest, they're women who look like me and they felt the same problem. And so you speaking to that really goes to their heart. I would also say that, so yes, kind of merge the opening with the problem, because I think I got just a little bit confused with the opening and then the problem, right? With the heart, because it's you're so smart, it all makes sense and it all rose together. And I'm I just learned two different things. I'm learning. So I think that would be really great. Also, I would say to merge about 3 of your slides. So again, we're giving you feedback for more pitches in the future, for more discussions in the future, and they're all going to be quite different, right? Your pitch for your partners, your pitch for the angel investors, your pitches for different agencies. So with the medical groups, and I would say think about Springboard Enterprises. They do a dolphin tank for women for healthcare. So really speak to that group, and I can give an intro. And there's also kind of this thought of, with your slides, kind of merging the equity and investment slide, the intended use slide, and the last slide. Because you were telling us, what you're going to do with it 3 different ways. You were really triangulating what you're going to do. And it's we trust you. You've made $500,000 in 3 years, right? So you don't have to spend as much time on that. I think I would spend more time really helping us to understand the economic and social impact of this issue, because you're so well versed in it. It seems easy, and I think we need to really get in there with you. It's kind of how Laith did with the kind of why now, right? So kind of merging your opening and your problem, and then reiterating the problem again with the why now, because I believe the FDA is doing a big push for this right now. Yeah. So kind of pulling in that FDA urgency into what you're doing. And then I'll round it out. And again, the professor and me, tons of notes, so I'll email it to you as well. I would also talk about your competitors. And so I'm not burdened by too much knowledge. So in my mind, your competitors are kind of those CROs sort of groups or academic who are those groups that are doing this sort of research that you're more nimble and you're able to approach it. So just kind of educate us on that so that we know that there's a bigger industry, because I think in my mind, the little bit that I knew is that there's a lot of barriers to entry for this. And so maybe letting me know how you're circumventing those barriers to entry, exactly like my extremely smart colleague mentioned here. How are you going to compete with Microsoft? I was asked, how are you going to compete with Google? And I said, Google doesn't do good research. I can show you all the peer-reviewed articles saying that this doesn't work. So, those sort of things. So I think that would help. And also love all the Nigerian names on the team. That too. Fakwe here.
We're strategic. We want to make sure that when patients come in, they see providers who look like them, who speak their languages. And, we have Spanish speaking, Swahili, TV, and Creole. So we just want to make sure that when patients come in, they feel comfortable with the providers that they see, and we spend that time to go over their medical history as well.
And
I did
apologies,
wanna mention
I give a
something,
lot.
though.
So who are your competitors again? 'Cause
Yes,
I was wrong with
I was
the
just going to
CRO.
say that. So drug development has different faces, different arenas, so to say. So when you mention CROs like Acuvia, Icon, and the rest of them, we don't compete in the same space because they are actually more of what I would call drug developers directly. But we are more of site management, and so we're completely different. So in New Jersey alone, for instance, there's hardly, I would say maybe one or two outpatient facility that does clinical trials that is embedded in the community like we are. So unless maybe you're in a place like maybe Atlanta, I know there's a company here, there are not that many in New Jersey.
Well, thank you, Teo.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.